I'm going to talk about something very, very small on the Playdate. Now, firstly, big Playdate news. Panic finally got things sorted so that I and a whole bunch of other international console owners can actually buy things on the catalogue again. You know, that was such an annoying thing that my card would be declined every time I tried to use it. And at first, they offered a soft fix where they emailed me to say, yeah, sorted, go for it, buy what you like. And yeah, that worked for certain purchases, but not others. Don't know why. But when I kicked it back to Panic, they were like, yeah. And then gave me no response again. So I just had to wait. Right. Either way, whatever was flagging certain cards or certain inventory or whatever, it's now been fixed. I can now satiate my little cranky shopping sprees whenever I fancy. And that's a good thing because there's been a few higher profile or slightly more expensive games that I've got my eye on that I want to pick up or have kind of got on my wish list, as it were. There's a puzzle game called Spilled Mushrooms that even Georgia messaged me about that she'd seen it on another site recommended. And she was like, this seems up your street. And it was like, yeah, it's on the wish list, actually. But I'm looking forward to checking that out. There's another puzzle game called Poker Magic, which is kind of a bit more like a kind of dropping card game sort of Tetris hybrid thing. There's a shoot 'em up called Void Blazers that looks very, very nice. There's a unbelievably nicely presented 3D train simulator game called 00 Perfect Stop. But all these kind of, they were just a bit out of my price range at the moment. I've had a heavy month for car repairs, which is always a laugh. But either way, I will pick them up in time. Instead, I picked up a very cheap Playdate release and one of the earliest Playdate releases, which I found kind of buried at the tail end of the catalogue shop shelf, the curiously titled Eyeland. And this is a bite-sized adventure game, no more than like an hour or so in length. And impressively, the whole thing was made in the browser development kit Pulp that Panic kind of, released for free for people to mess around with. My one-line review and basically reminder to myself is the classic adage, don't judge a book by its cover. It's a really boring kind of phrase, but when we first got our Playdates, I went mad buying and sideloading games from itch. And, that was pre-catalogue. We didn't have as much kind of to choose from in terms of like the bigger names. But Eyeland would pop up again and again and again on itch. And every time I saw it, I'd shrug my shoulders and go, it's just a tech demo made in Pulp though, isn't it? It's just a stupid little game. And I never gave it a chance. And that's because, when you see a game made in Pulp, often there are sort of telltale signs. You've often got kind of flick screen stages without scrolling. You usually have grid-based movement. You often have tiny sprites that snap smoothly along kind of the invisible horizontal and vertical lines of the screen. You generally have monophonic music. There's nothing wrong with any of this stuff. It's used in the right way. But early doors, when the Playdate was still this thrilling new handheld prospect and we were talking about it every week, I wanted to see absurd 3D rendered characters, or I wanted to see wonky first-person shooters or grand strategy games failing to work on the console. I just wanted to see what it could do at its limits before I kind of went back to play something that, in my mind, was like, well, it's just like a Spectrum game, isn't it? That didn't seem like the thing I wanted to use the handheld for. But once more for those at the back, don't judge a book by its cover, because Eyeland has to be up there as one of the most effective uses of Pulp, first and foremost. Like the tile-based trappings are still there in its art and its movement, but this little adventure has such soul in its writing and its design and its art direction and music that within 5 minutes you've forgotten its limitations and you can just sink totally into this cute little story. I know it's only an hour, but at no point during that play did I even consider getting up or taking a break or having a wee or anything like that. It was just like, I am all in. I'm going to play this till I finish it as soon as it kind of properly kicked off. As a setup, you are a weird little guy. You live on a weird little island. You are yearning for something new. And at the start of the game, all you can do is wander about. Me. At the start of the game, starring as Jonathan Dunn, you can just walk about, trigger little kind of captions and internal monologue dialogue when you approach different triggers or objects. And all you can really do is just go to sleep. But once you retire for the night, you wake up to find yourself in Eyeland, the titular Eyeland, presented with the cryptic message, this dream, although fantastic, must end. Find your way through and out. And then you just spend 60 minutes or so pottering about, meeting weird characters, solving simple puzzles. It's very economical design. Despite being as truncated as it is, it put me in mind of the weirdly liminal and dreamier parts of Link's Awakening. So there's kind of a connection to what you just talked about with Echoes. It made me think of the modern kid-friendly surrealism of a show like Adventure Time, or that kind of art style, that kind of thinking. It even put me in mind, in a strange way, of Kentucky Route Zero, in the way it increasingly presents odd locations or events or characters without any particular fanfare. They're just there to be met and kind of absorbed. I alluded very briefly to its presentation, but it's really worth shouting out that as a first project, single designer Ron Lent, that's the guy who made this game, has done an astonishing job of painting a really, really rich world through text and image and sound. The audio is still using essentially like MIDI-esque capability of Pulp and the Playdate brilliantly. It's got lush ambient pieces sometimes. It's got nice chiptune Foley, even nice chiptune Foley as well. The pixel art intelligently inverts color where needed as well. So, on one screen, your character might be a little black blob with its little kind of, wandering about. And then in a different screen, if you need a black background, you're a little white blob. It's just,
racial.
It works. It uses like errant pixels as well to create texture really nicely. So, a beach, you understand to be a beach, and a mountain, you understand to be a mountain, even though it's just a couple dots. And it also, despite Pulp having that kind of limit on these very, very small sprites, it will often combine lots of smaller sprites to create like a set piece character or event or something. And again, it just works really successfully. The writing flits between being powerfully silly and stirringly elegiac, I'd say. Probably best described as like flippantly poignant. So that when the game does finish, and I won't spoil any of it in case people want to pick it up, you will feel something. And that's an incredible achievement for what appears at first glance to be something that is just whimsical and throwaway. I can't praise it enough, really. Like, it's about $2, I think, on either the catalogue or via itch.io. It's easily one of my favourite Playdate experiences I've had in quite some time as well.
Nice.
Because for a long while I've been hooked on kind of like score chasing stuff like Be Kind to Yourself and things like that I got really heavily invested in. But this is the first time in a while I've sat down and thought, I just want to play something that does have this little story. It's self-contained. I can beat it. I can get to the end and feel like I've had an experience with it. And it really, really delivers. So yeah, Eyeland, big recommend. And it's always nice to pick up the Playdate after a month or two and just remind yourself that it's a cool little device that does things differently. And the games are different, even if they're trying to kind of riff on established things. It feels different for the platform it's on. And that's a cool thing, I think.